Welcome to Fireside Giants. My name is Alex with my co-host here, Anthony Rivardo. Today we got a couple things on the agenda ranging from Kyle Rudolph, the contract he just signed, and suddenly a foot injury coming out of nowhere. We're going to talk about that a little bit, what we think about that going towards the regular season, how that might impact him. And then, of course, a couple restructures. The Giants seem to keep finding money places, but I think the restructures to James Bradberry and Blake Martinez probably already used that money. People, some people might think, let's go sign Trey Turner, let's go sign this guy, that guy. I think this money probably was allocated to Dory Jackson, but we'll talk about that, how that impacted the cap space for the Giants, what their current cap situation looks like right now. Before we dive into all this good stuff, Anthony, how you doing today, my friend?
I'm doing great. I just said it, didn't I, last video? Didn't I just say that Dave Gettleman was lying to us? I knew he was lying to us. I knew he was going to restructure some contracts, and I'm very proud of him for lying to us and lying to pretty much everybody, making everybody think that the Giants were very pressed for cap space and had no room to work. We knew they had room to work. We knew that they were probably going to restructure Martinez and Bradberry. Then he was like, nah, no way, man. I'm not doing that. Then he did it. So I'm very proud of Dave Gettleman. He's really been keeping everything under wraps, being, moving in the shadows, kind of being a little more sneaky with everything that he's doing, not telling the media his full plans every time he gets the chance to. So, good job, Dave Gettleman. Again, my hats go off to you. Once again, I'm waving the pom-poms, and I'm being a huge Dave Gettleman stan today. Don't know what happened in this past month or so that really changed my mind on Dave Gettleman, but yeah, man, very positive, very happy with this. The Giants have cleared a little more cap space, probably, like you said, being allocated towards a Dory Jackson, but still, as the Giants get closer to the draft, get closer to the regular season, we need some cap space for emergencies and to sign our draft class. So I think this is a job really well done by the Giants and their front office, and I am looking forward to seeing this team play in 2021 with a lot of new pieces brought to us through restructured cap space. Very excited with that.
Yeah, me too. And, we talked about yesterday the culture change that this Giants team kind of has undergone in terms of Joe Judge's influence and helping Dave Gettleman, see the best of his abilities. And I think it really comes down to the cohesiveness, the communication within the front office that has really translated to the players and why the players are suddenly taking a big step forward in terms of helping recruit, helping bring in big names. And, John Ross was sitting there. He was saying, like, or rather it was a Dory Jackson. I think Dory Jackson was like, I was sitting there, hanging out, and suddenly Kenny Golladay was a Giant. And I was like, oh, crap, like, that's interesting. And then he went to interview with the Giants, of course. They were bringing players in to kind of justify whether or not they could fit into the culture there, because they're being very, very careful about who they bring in these days. And Adoree Jackson ended up being a perfect fit. 25 years old, super young, an elite athlete with insane potential. He has the potential to be a top-end CB1, and we have him at CB2 for 3 years. That's the reality of the situation. In 2019, the guy was an absolute stud, like lockdown cover corner. Injuries have hurt him a little bit in the past, but I think, with the way the Giants play a lot of zone coverage, I think it'll take a little bit of stress off of him in terms of having to be aggressive and stopping the run in a very aggressive way. But we'll see. We'll see how they tailor him to their defense. I think he's going to be a phenomenal fit. The Giants are going to be able to send more safeties and linebackers on blitzes, and it'll really allow the cornerbacks to dominate in coverage. And James Bradberry was given so much just so much work to do last season. They were like shut down an entire side of the field. So we can help the CB2 positions. Isaac Yiadom, Ryan Lewis, Corey Ballantyne, that position needed help all season long. Ended up losing us a couple games, specifically against Dallas in that first contest. I remember Michael Gallup caught a long pass downfield, set them up for a field goal. That doesn't happen against Adoree Jackson. His makeup speed, incredible athlete. He can return kicks. But his contract, the details aren't yet public for the most part, but we can assume, I think they said that the first year he's going to make about $16 million. I don't know what the cap hit's going to look like, but the Giants just restructured James Bradberry and Blake Martinez. So essentially, James Bradberry's hit for 2021 will be $13.25 million, and Blake Martinez will be about, they lowered it significantly, $6.725. So in total, they lowered $7.5 million. Which is a nice little chunk of change. Right now, they have about $11.5 million in cap space. We'll see what Adoree Jackson's cap hit looks like. They still need about $4 to $5 million for their draft picks, so that'll be interesting to iron out as the offseason progresses. But the draft is coming up really, really soon. I was looking at the dates today, and I was like, oh my god, like it's really only like a month away. And I'm super excited for the draft. This is going to be the turning point for the Giants, I think. We talked about the offensive line in our last video and how we think they will probably go about solving a couple of those positions. But Anthony, do you think that with this new available cap space that was made by Bradberry and Martinez being restructured, do you think that they might target a guy like Trey Turner, or just completely, save that money, save it for the draft picks, and then go into the draft thinking offensive line.
Yeah, I don't think that this was done in order to create cap space for a new signing. I think this was done to create cap space for the new signing that we just made. You know, Adoree Jackson, Kenny Golladay even. Like, we just spent a lot of money. I don't see the Giants going out there and spending more money, and I don't think that it's wise of them to. I don't think they should. I think, yeah, it's time to start focusing on the draft. It's creeping up. It's about a month away. It's time for Dave Gettleman and his scouting staff to just start watching film, grinding tape all day long, and making sure that the Giants have their draft board complete, ready to go. They've got all of their questions answered, and they know exactly who they want come the end of April. So I think that's kind of where the focus is going to shift for the Giants and their front office. I'm sure they'll make a couple more low-key signings, some depth signings. They kind of just did one with Devontae Downs, re-signed him. I'm sure that's what they're going to do. I don't see them making another splash or maybe even like getting a solid starter out of the rest of free agency. I don't think that happens. I think Trey Turner is somebody that, yeah, he has that Dave Gettleman connection. According to Matt Lombardo, the two sides haven't even contacted each other. There is that reported interest was fake. That was fake news. So I don't think that it happens. I don't think Trey Turner ends up with the Giants. I think now the Giants look ahead to the draft. They take the money that they just freed up, allocated to the two big signings we just made and towards this draft class. I know the Giants only have 6 picks, right? So they're technically not going to spend that much money on their draft class, but potentially, you never know. Giants have been surprising us a lot lately. I would be surprised if Dave Gettleman trades down, but maybe they will get more draft picks, and that would mean they need more money allocated to their draft class. So I think that's what they're trying to keep in mind. They need money for April, so I think that's really what they're doing with these restructures. One thing that I'll say about them, though, very happy with these restructures. Good job. Hats off to Dave Gettleman. Kind of wish that it was an extension. I kind of wish it was a 1-year extension for James Bradberry, because I think that having Bradberry and Adoree Jackson's contracts expire on the same year would be a good idea. Maybe not, though. Interested to hear what you might think of that, Alex, and definitely interested to hear what everyone in the comment section on YouTube would think of that. But I'm sure, eventually James Bradberry will get an extension. I have no doubt in my mind that he's going to continue playing at a high level and get an extension eventually and play on a second contract with the Giants. But, yeah, I just, I think it's a great job to restructure these deals, but sometimes you can make these restructures while also extending them an extra year, and I just really like James Bradberry, and I really like Blake Martinez as well, so I would have liked to see them extended. That's my only takeaway that I had from these extensions, or from these restructures, that I was like, well, maybe they could have done this instead, but, that's kind of nitpicking. I think the Giants have done a phenomenal job with contracts this offseason in general. Love the Kenny Golladay contract. Really like the Adoree Jackson contract. I know a lot of people don't. I really like it, and I really like the Kyle Rudolph contract as well. I think the Giants have given out a lot of good contracts. There is one that sticks out like a sore thumb. I don't like the Devontae Booker contract, but I won't even get into that. Really, like I said, I'm going to continue to praise Dave Gettleman and wave the pom-poms for him because I think he's knocked it out of the park this offseason.
Look, I mean, they could have got Mike Davis instead of Devontae Booker. We saw what he did with Christian McCaffrey out, so there's the alternative. But I'm not too worried about Devontae Booker. He's the least of our worries at the moment. But like you mentioned, extending Blake Martinez and James Bradberry might be the future, because I'm looking at their contract hits for next season, their cap hits really. $20.5 million for Bradberry, and for Martinez is $14 million. So I could totally see them adding an extra year and pushing it down the line a little bit. Just keep kind of like kicking the can down the road, because next year we only have about $30.5 million in cap space, and we have some big names to re-sign. Obviously, you have Saquon Barkley's 5th-year option. They'll probably end up picking up. So we'll see about that. But I don't know where a lot of the money will come from. Hopefully, ideally, they knock the draft out of the park, and you're good for next year. Your draft picks from last year end up taking big roles, and this year's draft class ends up dominating and taking a big step moving into 2022. So that's the ideal. You want to build through the draft. Free agency is to plug holes, and the Giants plugged 2 major holes this offseason. Don't get me wrong. They plugged wide receiver 1, and wide receiver 1's rarely ever hit the free agent market, so they capitalized on that, and they plugged a CB2 hole with Adoree Jackson. And, some people might say we overpaid, blah, blah, blah. 2 years from now, that contract's going to look like a steal. He's making about, $13 million per season on average. If for a high-end CB1, and they see him as a potential CB1 at playing CB2, $13.3 million for a CB1 is a steal, absolute steal. I mean, in 2 years from now, when that contract really comes to fruition, they're like, okay, the cap is already so high, that contract's like a CB2 right now, a high-end CB2, and he's playing at a even higher level. it's going to look really good. Now they just have to keep him healthy. That's the thing, is we don't know if he'll actually end up playing as well as they hope he will. But free agency is to plug holes. Cornerbacks, oftentimes when you draft them, take a year or 2, even 3 years to develop to their true potential. And I think coming off his rookie contract, Adoree Jackson is going to hit his stride. He's hitting his prime right now. So I think that's what they're looking at. They're like, it takes a couple years for cornerbacks to usually grasp the NFL, the physicality, the size of the players, the speed, everything involved, the new schematics. It takes a while to get used to it for corners, and they are already getting a guy 25 years old coming off his rookie deal. It makes a lot of sense, and they're paying him they're paying him a lot, but it makes sense if he ends up playing that good, and the potential for him is CB1. So I'm excited about the signing. I'm sure everybody else is as well. But regardless, that leads us to Kyle Rudolph, because Kyle Rudolph was a guy the Giants brought in to be like, you're Jason Witten for Jason Garrett. You're that tight end who can sit down in the middle of the field in 5 to 10 yard range and just collect passes. That big body, that big frame. The guy hasn't dropped a pass in over 90 targets. That's incredible. 2 years hasn't dropped a pass. 85 receptions over the past 2 years, which isn't a ton of targets. But for the most part, you're looking at Evan Ingram had 109 targets last year, and he dropped like 13 passes, whatever. Once you get past the 6 range, you're like, you might as well just freaking add it up. But Kyle Rudolph, the guy has sure hands. His one touchdown last year was a one-handed grab in the end zone. I think that, 6'4", he's a big guy. Maybe 6'6". I don't know. I think he's 6'6". He's a big guy, and he can be that red zone threat for DJ. And you have Kenny Golladay at 6'4". You have Evan Ingram. You have Kyle Rudolph. You have Sterling Shepard, who's one of the best red zone targets in football when being utilized properly. I mean, if you're in the red zone, there is no excuse not to score. We went from a team who literally couldn't score in the red zone to a team that now has 3-4 premier red zone targets, Anthony. How do you see this offense taking a step forward in terms of utilizing those big, tall guys? Do you think it's going to benefit Daniel Jones? If you said no, I probably think you're crazy. I would think you're crazy. But how do you think they go about, utilizing these big guys moving forward?
I don't think it'll benefit Daniel Jones at all, actually. Just kidding. I'm not crazy. I think it'll help Daniel Jones exponentially. I think this could be the year that Daniel Jones breaks out. I think, Kyle Rudolph, I think, is a really solid signing. At first, I didn't like it, but then I looked into it a little more, and I was like, wow, this is a really solid value signing for the Giants, because they're getting probably the most consistent and reliable tight end in the NFL, other than, those big names like George Kittle and them. In terms of, not a superstar, he's so consistent, so reliable, doesn't drop passes, contributes as a run blocker, is a decent, receiver in the passing game. Actually a pretty good one at that. So I really like that sign, and I think that might have a lot of impact on how Daniel Jones plays this year. I think that could really help both the running game and the passing game, but just giving Daniel Jones someone reliable underneath to run those hook routes, to run those flat routes that just catches the ball, falls forward for an extra 5 yards at a time, and also provides something in pass protection and in the running game. I think Kyle Rudolph is a solid value sign, and I really like it. And I think that he will have a huge impact on the Giants' offense this year if he stays healthy. And I think it's kind of one of those underrated things where people probably don't see it necessarily that way. But I think, we have a really solid tight end in Evan Ingram. I really like Evan Ingram. I think that he can be a complete weapon when used properly. Unfortunately, I didn't think that he fit so well into Jason Garrett's offensive scheme, because he was asked to do a lot of that underneath stuff, those curl routes, those flat routes. Not really a lot of crossers, deep crossers, not a lot of corners. Those are the routes that I like him on, not a lot of seam routes. That's what I like Evan Ingram on. I think now he'll be able to run those more often, because the Giants have somebody that can just work the underneath in Kyle Rudolph, in some 12 personnel, 2 tight end sets. I think that is going to be huge for Daniel Jones, just giving him 2 options, a tight end that's athletic and goes downfield, and a tight end that's reliable and stays underneath. I think you'll see less drops from Evan Ingram in return from this, and I think that you'll see more big plays from Evan Ingram, and then I think you'll see Daniel Jones make smarter decisions with his checkdowns with a guy that he can trust in Kyle Rudolph. That's my take on Kyle Rudolph. Kenny Golladay, I've gone over it 1,000 times. I think there's a chance that he could be the Plaxico Burress to Eli Manning, for Daniel Jones. I think that's what he could be. So I think that's a huge signing. The Giants offense should take a huge step forward this year. Going to be predicated on how the offensive coordinator does this year, but keep in mind we have Saquon Barkley coming back from injury. Now, I know people are fat-shaming him on the internet. You need to stop with that. He was wearing a baggy t-shirt. He has been pretty much, laying in bed with a torn ACL, keeping his calorie intake up because he has to. He's going to shed that weight. It's not
muscle
even a problem.
Memory.
He's going to be
just
completely
muscle memory.
fine.
The second he starts working it out again, it'll turn right back into muscle.
He's going to be completely fine if he did add weight. To me, it just looked like he had a baggy T-shirt on. That's how I feel. I think Saquon's going to be great this year.
It's harder to bulk than it is to shed weight, so keep that in mind.
Yeah, and you know what? Maybe he could afford to put on a couple extra pounds, be a little more powerful hitting the holes. I think that he's a great outside runner. I've been a little critical of him going up the middle. Now, granted, the Giants have had really poor blocking going up the middle most of the time he does it, but I think this year, if they're able to improve the offensive line through the draft, get Saquon Barkley, maybe he can be better on those inside zone power run blocking plays with a few extra pounds on his body. That actually might benefit him, so I'm really not worried about that. I think that he's going to do a lot because you're going to see sometimes they're going to crowd the boxes. Kenny Galladay and Sterling Shepard are going to get wide open because of that. And then you're going to see times where they don't crowd the boxes, and you're going to see Saquon Barkley take off for a 50-yard run because that's what he's capable of doing, right? So, yeah, I think this offense is going to take huge strides forward. Hopefully Jason Garrett can put together a really solid offensive scheme so everybody can play to their strengths and thrive this year. And then, additionally, I will say, keep in mind, I'm going to keep banging the table on this. Freddy Kitchens is a senior offensive assistant now. He is going to have a lot more say in the playbook, and I think that he's going to implement a lot more vertical passing concepts into this playbook, and that is something that makes me very, very excited for the Giants offense in 2021.
Yeah, and let's just review kind of the situation with Kyle Rudolph really quickly because, that is something to be concerned about. Essentially, he said today it was certainly an interesting 24 hours regarding kind of what happened. Suddenly the contract was in question after they discovered this foot issue. One that was unexpected, he said, but it's kind of a blessing that we're able to find this issue. It was an issue from the season. He missed the last 4 games with a foot injury in 2020, so keep that in mind. We can fix it in March, and I won't miss any football. So, essentially, unless they're going to have like an in-person mini camp in the next couple of weeks, he'll probably miss that, but he should be ready for the 2021 football season, the regular season. So I'm not worried about that. That's probably why they were like, let's just give him the contract. Let's not mess with it. I think they're going to be just fine in terms of, getting him into the system, getting him ready to, take advantage of this starting kind of position he's being put into immediately. So I'm pretty optimistic about Kyle Rudolph being just fine. Honestly, losing him would have been more of a concern for me because I think he's going to work really well in Jason Garrett's scheme as a guy who can collect those hooks and those sit down routes right in the middle of the field. Evan Ingram drops so many of them. He has terrible hands. We know this. Kyle Rudolph doesn't drop those passes. Those are first downs. Those are turnovers that Evan Ingram allowed last season. I think they might try to get a little bit more creative with Ingram now that Kyle Rudolph is here, using him in the slot more, using him on crossers, getting him pushing him downfield. I don't think they're going to sit him down as much as they did last season, and they kind of forced him into this role that he wasn't comfortable in. But I think we're actually going to see Ingram play a little bit better, taking a little bit of those snaps away from him in terms of just targets. And I really do think his catch rate will go up because of it. So we'll see how they use these two tight ends, but I think it's exactly what Jason Garrett needed: a big body frame, a guy who doesn't drop the football, somebody who they can activate in the red zone, who's going to make plays for them. And it's going to help Daniel Jones a ton because the guy needed someone who can catch the ball.
Let me make this comparison. I think that you're going to see Kyle Rudolph play the Jason Witten role, and I think that you're going to see Evan Ingram play the Blake Jarwin role. Kind of goes more vertical. Remember when Blake Jarwin had 3 tight ends and torched the living crap out of the Giants? I think it was 2019, right? And then that was the game where Janoris Jenkins basically just gave up and didn't tackle him, right? Blake Jarwin tore us alive in that game, and I think that's because he was really going vertical a lot, and they were using him in really creative ways. So maybe Evan Ingram fits into the Blake Jarwin role, which might be something that Giants fans find exciting, and then Kyle Rudolph fits into that Jason Witten reliable role, which is something that Giants fans might find even more exciting. So that's what I kind of envision with the Giants offense under Garrett in 2021.
Exactly. So, this is just kind of a little update video on what's going on today in terms of Kyle Rudolph, what they did with the contracts restructuring, and, just to finalize things, they re-signed linebacker Devontae Downs. Everyone freaked out and was like, oh no, he sucks. He's just a camp body, guys. He's basically nobody. They're just bringing him in, probably definitely a veteran minimum salary with probably no guaranteed money, if anything, probably like $100K. I think the veteran benefit salary is like $175K guaranteed, so whatever, just give him the money and run. He's a camp body. He knows the system. He can play on special teams. it's nothing, guys. Just overlook the Devontae Downs signing, and remember that we got Kenny Galladay and Dory Jackson. You know, these types of signings are just depth pieces now. We're just filling holes at the back end of the roster, bringing in guys to compete during training camp. You know, I wouldn't worry about it. So, you know, as we go forward, we'll have you guys covered with any updates in terms of free agent signings, any depth pieces that they do bring back. But, you know, I'm excited, man. I haven't been this excited as a Giants fan in probably years. And they fixed a bunch of big holes, man. I'm super hyped, Anthony. Anything else to mention before we log off here?
Just stay tuned, man. We've got a lot of great content in the works, you know, as we get closer to the draft. As Alex and I mentioned earlier, the draft is about a month away. We've got a lot of great content planned for the draft. A lot of film breakdowns, a lot of discussion videos on mock drafts, all that stuff. So stay tuned to that. And, of course, we'll keep updating you all on free agency, all that news, contract restructures, cap space, giving you updates on all that, keeping you up to date. Thank you for all the support you guys have been showing us lately. It's been very overwhelming, and we're very appreciative of it. So thank you for tuning into Fireside Giants. Keep tuning in. We got a lot of great elite content on the way.
Absolutely, guys. You heard it from our excellence himself, leader of the Joe Judge fan club. But as always, guys, thank you so much for tuning into Fireside Giants. Make sure to subscribe below and put your notifications on for Twitter, everything, really. Spotify, Apple, whatever others like podcasting services you might use. I'm really excited for the near future. A lot of great content, as Anthony mentioned, coming out very soon. But hopefully you guys enjoy. We'll catch you guys on the next video.